Hello, I'm Callum Winter, and this is IWCTV Now, bringing you the latest stories from across the Isle of Wight. Throughout the series, we'll be looking at a range of stories from different perspectives and hopefully shedding a new light on some of the continuous issues that are affecting islanders. Now, unless you've been living in a hole in the ground, you would have no doubt heard that there is a new floating bridge operating between East Cowes and Cowes. However, this shiny new vessel has not been without its problems. Shortly, we'll be joined by Wayne Whittle from the Isle of Wight Council and Jane Goddard, who owns a local business in East Cowes, to discuss the new floating bridge and how it's affecting the community. But first, here's a report from our roving reporter, Charlotte.
The Cowes floating bridge has been a useful source of transport on the Isle of Wight since 1859. It saves a 10-mile journey through Newport to travel in between East Cowes and Cowes. The new vessel was commissioned by the Isle of Wight Council to replace one that was nearly 40 years old. Before the release of the new vessel, the council claimed that it would not only be more efficient but also more reliable. Many customers have been unable to use this vital service. The many issues with this service are as follows: 13th of May, vessel launched. 14th of May, vessel broke down. 15th of May, service suspended. 7th of June, ran aground. 9th of June, ran aground for a second time. 10th of June, ran aground for a third time. 13th of June, taken out of service at low tide. 30th of June, broke down due to electrical fault. 21st of July, withdrawn from service at night due to noise levels disturbing nearby residents. 4th of September, withdrawn from service indefinitely. 11th of December, service resumed as part of an extended trial. So it's clear that the issues with the new vessel is affecting residents and businesses of the Isle of Wight. What was a reliable and vital service has quickly become an untrustworthy nuisance. This is Charlotte Goddard, reporting from East Cowes, Isle of Wight.
So Wayne, how do you feel that the floating bridge has affected tourism in East Cowes and Cowes?
Well, I would say while it wasn't running and while it was out of service being manufactured, it must have affected tourism. And it's a vital link between East Cowes and West Cowes. And it's not an ideal situation, to say the least. It seems like there's a collection of errors that's caused this. But what you have to remember is we can't just say it's not like a Happy Meal where we say my Happy Meal's cold, I want another Happy Meal. It's something where we have to try to keep it in service, particularly during the season. And that's probably why it was taken out of service at the end of last season, because that was the time to try and put a lot of these things right. But it's just been a catalogue of errors and snagging difficulties, and it's not an ideal situation for the island, particularly East Cowes and West Cowes.
Definitely.
And so how does the floating bridge impact island businesses and their development?
Well, it's going to affect the businesses, particularly the small businesses, and even like Waitrose, because they put their store in East Cowes hoping that people would come across from West Cowes. West Cowes is obviously one of the main draws for tourism. In East Cowes, probably the main draw is going to be Osborne House, isn't it? And then you get some people come through. From what I understand is I'm actually a ride counsellor, and one of our strategies as a town council, being a town that has a gateway, just like East Cowes, is to keep the people in the gateway, because everybody's passing through, and that is something that's a challenge to East Cowes, to keep commuters coming off of the cross-Solent service, but also the floating bridge is a vital service from West Cowes to East Cowes.
Jane, how do you feel?
With my business, we're a care agency and we cover East Cowes to Ryde and West Cowes to Newport. So where the staff have had a rota which is fixed, when the floating bridge was off, we've had to alter clients' times because obviously they've had to drive round, which means they're travelling quite a long time, and for me that's had an impact because we've had to pay out more than what we would normally. And obviously there's a frustration there with the staff having to travel and then to come all the way back, because we do need our cars. We can't go on the replacement vessel, you know, to get you over to Cowes and back. But I do know a lot of the small businesses in East Cowes, they've really suffered to the extent where one of the main ones, which is also the Tourist Information Office, is actually closing very shortly, which is sad. And there's businesses that have gone before that, they just can't cope. Many of the businesses have recorded losses.
The Isle of Wight Radio has released an article saying that the difference between the expected profit and actual loss is around £1 million. How do you feel about this, Wayne?
Well, I know about it because that was derived from council papers for the budget. The loss is obviously the loss in revenue from it operating, and the second part of the loss is the loss of the cost of the jenny boat, which has to be brought into service every time the floating bridge is out of service. Although the jenny boat helps the commuters, it doesn't really help the people who have to drive, because then we get the congestion again going round through Newport. It's not ideal, and it's a loss to the council that the council will probably have to enter legal challenge over to try to redeem those losses back from the people who were tasked to install the bridge.
And Jane?
The impact of it, you know, it has affected the council. They're having to make cuts, you know, to valuable services, and the extra money that they've had to pay out, you know, that's going to stretch their finances even further. So, you know, it's affecting everybody, the council, the small businesses, you know, people just wanting to get out from Cowes to East Cowes and vice versa, who would have, you know, done that as a little day trip. So it's everyone that's affected by it.
And how has your business suffered as a result of the floating bridge?
As I said to you before about clients' times having to be, you know, at different times to what they would normally be because of having to get round the other side when the floating bridge was off. But now there's a great loss of faith in the bridge. One, we don't know when it's going to run aground, you know, having to tell clients that we're going to be later. The costs were raised, so there's a cost there because we wouldn't expect our carers to pay for the floating bridge cost. And it's made us look at the business plan, and actually, although we've continued with our existing Cowes clients, we have been reluctant to take on any more because of what's happened. So, you know, unless there's a reliable service in place, you know, where the carers are not going to have their cars scraped, because that has happened, you know, with the technical difficulties, we're not really taking on any more Cowes clients, because we don't want to let them down. So therefore that has an impact on the business income.
What solution would you like to see as a local business owner?
it would just be lovely to have a reliable service. Yeah, one where we can have our faith rebuilt with it. I know there's probably much more that we don't know, and we're not privy to the information of the floating bridge. But you know, from a consumer, we want something that's reliable.
Wayne, how would you like to see? What solution would you like to see?
Well, the same really. We need a link that's going to be reliable for the users. We need it to be run properly, to run to the right hours, and the right extended hours as well, because I know that there's people who come back across who work in East Cowes or West Cowes. The situation, I'm probably to blame for part of the first problem with the floating bridge, and that is because I previously met with the business association from East Cowes while it wasn't yet delivered before the 13th of May, and they were complaining then that it had been out of service while it was being manufactured for such a long time, and they made me promise them that I would push to get the floating bridge back into service as quickly as I could, and I did exactly that. But it was because of that it went in too early before they did the training of the staff, because don't forget, this new floating bridge operates different to the old one. This new floating bridge, the pilot has to rely on 2 cameras at the front, which isn't an easy thing to do. It's like you're driving your car, depending on what 2 cameras are showing you, so you've got to get your head around that. And we put it into service too quickly, and obviously there was an electrical fault, I believe, that stopped it in the river. And that's where we got the bad footage in the news of people being carried off. I think part of the grounding was down again to the driving of that bridge and getting used to it. And this is something that the staff have learned as it's gone along.
I'm sorry, but we're going to have to move on to the next question now. As someone who works closely with the community, Jane, what impact do you think the new floating bridge has made?
It's been a disaster, I think, but there's forever hopes that we will have, you know, a floating bridge that will bridge that link and restore faith and have a good service. We can see the impact of shops closing, you know, who are reliant on that footfall. And that is very sad. As a business owner, the last thing you want to do is to build up a business and then for it to, you know, to have to close. So, you know, I feel very sorry for those people and the local people who can't get out to, let's say, Newport, who rely on those small shops. So it's had a massive impact, there's no doubt.
Yeah. What opinions are on the new vessel compared to the old one? Is there any major differences, Wayne?
Well, it looks better, but looking good isn't always the main thing, is it? So there's been a lot said about the vessel and how much of it is in the water compared to what used to be. And there's been arguments to and fro about it, but they say that it's no bigger in the water than it was before. I think the truth is, though, you've got 2 large metal pieces that come out the front that look very close to the buildings when it comes over to West Cowes. I mean, it's working, it's operational. I think there were issues about the passenger area and how they access that. Not forgetting that the floating bridge, when it was procured, was supposed to be part of the East Cowes red funnel changes there, and it was separated. So another issue that come out of the new vessel was the vehicles leaving it at East Cowes and getting round the corner. But that only happened because it was supposed to be changed road network before that was brought into service, because it was supposed. So you had things like that. I think it was what you've got to look at. The council were probably focused on delivering a bridge, which was done, but it was receiving that delivery and managing the new vessel. And interestingly enough, when we had the previous vessel, there were near enough the same issues, because you're making a bespoke vehicle that will always have teething issues. but without a doubt it's a vital link. But interestingly enough, it wasn't seen as a statutory service. It was seen as discretionary. And I think that had a lot to do with its delivery and procurement, because it was being delivered and procured by officers from a service that had been shrunk.
So Jane, what's your opinion on it?
It's a lovely looking vessel. It really is. And if there hadn't have been all these problems, it would have been a real winner for the island, wouldn't it?
Well, we was thinking what we were going to call it once. I know
Yeah.
what I'd call it now.
Yeah, that's true. The old one, if it broke down, people were more forgiving, weren't they? Because it was old. But because this is brand new, sparkling, and how much was it? 3.2
I think
million, was
near
it
enough
something?
4 million
Yeah,
in the
more or
end.
less,
Plus
yeah.
what we've
So that's-
spent keeping it, you know.
Yeah, running
That's
it.
an awful lot of money.
Yeah.
I don't know why the old one went. Was it because it was just old?
It was at the end of its life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't in good nick.
Were there any major issues with the old vessel, or
Well, it
was
did
just
keep
due
they
for
had to
an
keep
upgrade?
taking that out of service, if you remember rightly, for
It's a long distance
jobs on
memory though, the
yeah.
old one,
I
isn't
know.
it? The new one has certainly taken over.
I think as islanders we like what we've got, don't
Yeah,
we? And I can remember when they first had the boarding up in Newport for McDonald's when it come here years ago, and somebody wrote on the boarding, "Go home Yankees." So it's like, yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so obviously this story is very relevant and impacts a lot of people, but unfortunately we've run out of time. Join us again next week, where we'll be talking about the possible pedestrianisation of Ventnor. But for now, it's goodbye from my guests, Wayne Whittle and Jane Goddard. And it's goodbye from me. Goodbye.